within 3 months of doing this type of fascia release, I felt more freedom and emotional releases and just a change, such a big change in the feel and function of my arm than I had in, 23 years of trying all the other types of modalities.
Okay, my sunshines, how many times do you have that feeling of pain or discomfort in your back, your neck, your shoulders, any part of your body, your knees, and nothing seems to work? Nothing that you're doing to stretch it out, to make it feel better is working at all. It took me years to understand that you really have to get to the root of the issue of these kind of things. And then I tried fascia release therapy. Game changer. How I found it was I took a trip to Costa Rica and I was doing a retreat and I gave it a try. It was part of the retreat. And let me tell you, it made a huge difference. And I realized that there were parts of my body that I truly didn't understand. And there were things that I was holding within that I didn't know how to release. And I needed a little help, as we all do, right? So Julia Blackwell is a fascia release practitioner. She's an educator. She is the creator of the Fascia Remedy. And you may be wondering, what the heck is fascia, right? All good. All good. We're going to cover that. That is why Julia is here on HIListically Speaking, not only to share more about what fascia is, but what you can do to relieve that pain, to be more mobile, to increase your performance. And Julia, I know that you have your own story, and I'm so grateful to have you here because this is a topic I haven't had on HIListically Speaking, and I think it is so important because it affects our entire body as a whole, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yes, thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. So let's talk about fascia. Before we go any further, let's define what fascia is so there's a clear understanding of it.
Oh, absolutely. Also, just from my Cincinnati roots, I'm going to call it fascia because all of my hard A's is just hard habit to break.
I love that. Yeah. I'm sure it's called something everywhere. There's different dialects all over the world who tune into HIListically Speaking. So I love that you bring that up.
Yeah, it's correct both ways. But yeah, so fascia is the biological fabric that organizes all of the water and material in your body. So you can think of it like plastic wrap that wraps around every single thing that you have. So every muscle fiber, every muscle, every bone, ligament, tendon, organ, blood vessel, nerve, it's all wrapped in this connective tissue that's one uninterrupted, interconnected system that functions as a unit. So this little 3-dimensional plastic wrap suit that we wear on the inside is so imperative for the shape and structure that you see in the mirror. That is you. So if that were to magically disappear out of your body, you would go tumbling to the ground in a pile of bone fragments and goo. Whereas on the flip side, if everything else except your fascia were to magically disappear out of your body, you would largely still look like you. So it's this very covert but very important tissue. It's the most abundant tissue we have actually in our body.
So basically it's keeping us all together, right?
Oh, yes. It's imperative to attaching everything to what needs to be attached to, and then it's also separating things that need to be separated. That's why we don't just balloon water down in our legs. It's what organizes all of that water and material.
Now, I know people tend to just go right to the roller, the foam roller, as a way to alleviate the pain or discomfort. There's really more to this kind of release therapy than just the roller itself, right?
Absolutely. There's a specific way to approach fascia. It plays many, many roles in our body besides just that structural and connective element. And one of those roles is to protect us. So it's what helps absorb shock. It's what subconsciously can brace for impact. So that's how we prevent more extreme injuries when we bang our elbow against the wall, or maybe something more intense like you crashed your mountain bike. But that protective element of it actually makes it a little bit difficult to change. Fascia does not change easily. So rolling around aimlessly on your roller or just really trying to beat your body into submission with this really intense trigger point isn't really the best way to approach fascia.
Okay. So I know you have your own story too. I mean, there's always something that brings us to the work we do, right? And for you, you dealt with pain for a number of years. And it sounds so similar to some of what I dealt with my own story. As I mentioned when we were just chit-chatting before, like I had major TMJ surgery, temporomandibular joint, but I also dealt with a lot of shoulder pain. And when I was reading your notes before we had a chance to meet, I was like, oh man, I totally resonate with what she's saying, because we deal with this discomfort and this pain, and our healthcare system has been failing us in this area. If they don't know the answer, they say, well, it's in our head, or, you just have to deal with it. And that's, or here's a pill to make the pain go away. And you took a deeper dive. You really took control of your own health. And I love that. So share a little bit about your story, because I know it's going to resonate with people.
Yeah, sure. So I was almost a 10-pound baby.
Wow.
I know. My mom is this tiny 5'4" lady. So I'm so sorry, Mom. But in the process of being born, I got stuck. So in the attempt to pull me out, the doctor ended up stretching and tearing most of the nerves in my right shoulder. So while I did have a nerve regraft surgery at about 4 months old, after that, they really sent me home and wished me the best of luck. And that was about it. So I was still left with a lot of limited mobility, a crazy amount of tension, and just a lack of strength in that arm. So growing up, I went through what I now call the Western medicine system runaround, which is going from doctor to doctor, practitioner to practitioner for all of these check-ins or treatments, if we want to call them that, without really any change. Or if I felt any change, it was very fleeting. I would feel better for about a day, and then things would go right back to where they were before. And, most people told me there was nothing that was ever going to change about this problem. It was always going to be this way. And if anything, it was only going to get worse, which is frankly a crazy thing to tell anyone, especially kids who have a much more suggestive mind. But we don't have 10 hours to talk about the things that doctors say to patients, right?
Yeah.
And, largely I had accepted that and really disconnected from my body. I rarely used my right arm at all because I figured it was simply a burden. It was something that was never going to get any better. And I still did try all kinds of different modalities, as many things as the 90s in Ohio had to offer. And yeah, I got all of the tools and gadgets you guys are probably familiar with. I went to so many different experts and had all kinds of treatments, but it wasn't until I moved out to Boulder in 2011 that I met someone who did a very specific and very obscure type of fascia release. And I hadn't ever heard of fascia, which is wild. I think I learned of it very briefly and fleetingly in college as an exercise physiology major, but had no real idea of what this thing was. And it absolutely blew me away. So within 3 months of doing this type of fascia release, I felt more freedom and emotional releases and just such a big change in the feel and function of my arm than I had in, 23 years of trying all the other types of modalities. So it certainly made a big impact on me. I was like, wow, if this can make a difference for something that has been, told to me that is just irrevocable, what can this do for all of these other people experiencing pain and mobility problems just like me? So it catapulted me into doing what I do now and being obsessed with sharing about fascia with everyone.
Isn't that the way it always happens, though, when we find a solution for ourselves? we truly want to share it in any way we possibly can to help more people so that they don't go through the struggle we went through.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And, even since that initial experience, I'm a very active person. I've had bouts of knee pain, of low back pain, of neck pain. And once you understand about fascia and how to release it and where to go to release it, I can solve just about any pain in a matter of days. It can be really simple when you understand where you need to go and how you need to release it.
And it's really about being an advocate for your own health, understanding your body and what you need, and ask questions. I think a lot of times we go to doctors, a lot of times people go to doctors and they just listen to what the doctor has to say, and that's that. And if you're not asking questions, or if you feel strange or that, I shouldn't be asking them, they're the authority, nobody knows your body better than you, and what you're feeling and what you're going through and what you're experiencing. And it's okay to ask questions. In fact, you should ask questions, And I got to tell you, Julia, I don't know how many times I've lost doctors that I've chosen specifically for functional or integrative medicine, if them having that as part of their studies, because, those are extracurricular studies, right? They don't learn that in medical school, but they don't learn nutrition. They don't learn the integrative approaches. And doctors will be the first to tell you that. It has to be an it's extra education, right? But I've lost so many doctors because they're leaving these practices to go into their own practice so that they can serve people better, because a lot of them have been through their own stuff.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a really good point to remind everyone, which is doctors are going to school to make sure that they can save your life. They're mostly learning about medications and really imperative symptoms that they need to be able to catch early and again, save your life if that's what's needed. They really don't have the training on, like what you said, about nutrition, about gut health, about mental health, about fascia, about all of these things. And so it's very common that someone goes to the doctor for pain and they're only going to get back what that person is trained in. So your doctor's likely going to recommend pain pills, recommend a cortisone shot, possibly recommend PT as well, but even things so far as surgery. And it's like, if I can predict what they're going to say. So most times, even when I was younger, I would be like, thank you for your time. I wanted to make sure this wasn't super serious. And, politely, I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah. And I wish I had that kind of knowledge when I had my TMJ surgery, but I was 15. Like, what do you know? You trust your parents, you trust your doctor. I've even had my mom come to me and say, I'm so sorry I didn't understand or didn't know, but that I don't blame. Right. But back then it was like, here's the surgery. Here's how you heal. There was no Ayurvedic. I've even had an Ayurvedic therapist come to me and say, you never had like any kind of massage on the inside. Nobody did anything to your jaw. I'm like, no, it was surgery and recovery. There was no rehabilitation. And that's just that specific issue. But I know there's people out there that have been through their own upsets in their body, their own traumas in their body, and are still trying to figure out ways to relieve the pain, but also manage it, right? Because that which gets measured gets managed. That which we understand, we can befriend and have a relationship with it. And I'm curious, like, what area can fascia really help? We mentioned, we're thinking the physical, we're thinking like the knees, the neck, the shoulders, parts of the body, but can it actually help deeper, like internally, like say with migraines or areas that you might not see and be able to physically move, but by relieving or causing release with the kind of work you do, can it go deeper and help other problems?
Yes. So because fascia wraps around every single thing in your body, it therefore influences the position and function of everything. So if it wraps around nerves and blood vessels and joints and bones, right? something that you likely think is a disc issue, it's a structural issue, it's a migraine that seems totally out of left field. These are all things that are, in fact, related to fascia. So if we go back to that plastic wrap analogy, that's not like 100% accurate, but it's a good way to visualize it to start. If that area of plastic wrap starts to stick to itself and become more restricted and dehydrated, like a little crumpled up ball of plastic wrap, that's going to start to pull on a whole series of muscles and bones. And then you're likely going to experience something that's further down the line that has nothing to do with that actual area of crumpled up plastic wrap. But again, it could be a pinched nerve, something that you think is nerve related, something that you think is joint related, or, I've heard it be called structural things. I can't tell you how many people have come to my office and they're like, well, I'm concerned about this knee pain, but I also know it's a structural thing. And I'm like, oh, pumpkin, let's get started.
You call him pumpkin, I call him sunshine.
Yeah, sunshine. I was like,
you're my people.
let's start working, and then we can decide if this is an actual structural problem, because most of the time it's not. There's a reason that your disc is being herniated, right? And it's not actually your spine. It's because there's a whole series of fascial tension and muscles being pulled in a different direction, causing that disc to be herniated. So I'm very big about helping other people find the root cause instead of, you mentioned pain management. I sort of hate that term because it's like, why would we want to manage pain? Let's actually find the root cause and straight up eliminate it.
Yeah. Well, when I mean manage, it's building that relationship too, because when you think pain management, sometimes you do think traditional doctors, but
fair.
What can be helpful with that is not just sloughing it off as, it is what it is, right? There's a way to get to the root cause of whatever it is, whether we can help with that, with the work you do or with the work I do, or we can find somebody for you that can be part of your entourage that helps you on your healing journey,
Absolutely.
How can this really become unhealthy in your body if you don't learn how to get to the root cause?
Well, there's a couple different ways. I suppose we can start with what causes fascia to become unhealthy in the first place. So number one, likely the most common, is underuse. None of us are really moving the way that our bodies are intended, myself included. I end up spending a lot of time with my work looking down as I work on people. We all spend more time sitting or at desks than we ought to. And so not moving our body in that full range of motion or in all of this very dynamic ways of moving, that's a big one. Repetitive movements in an overuse way is also big. So I've worked on a lot of professional athletes over the years. So the baseball players, the tennis players, anyone who is swinging in the same way over and over again or throwing in the same way, that can absolutely start to change and restrict fascia. Injury, any type of trauma that you've had, whether that's emotional or physical, something like a car accident, and just stress in general, those were the most common. And so we all have trauma. We've all had injuries before. It's just a process of, the more time we have on this earth, the more things that we accumulate.
You have different baggage. You either store it in the seat pocket in front of you, the overhead, or you check it. Sometimes you can fit it under your seat, but we all have trauma or baggage of some type. And when we learn where we can store it, or where it is stored rather, then we know how to deal with it. And hopefully we don't have to check it, right?
Yeah. But if it is something that's happening, you'll likely experience some kind of stiffness, achiness, pain. It could be fully chronic pain. We talked about pinched nerves, about poor posture. There's really an endless list of things that you might start to feel when your fascia becomes more dense. It becomes more dehydrated. You might feel like you're very prone to injuries and you're pulling muscles a lot, or feeling like, it takes a really long time to recover from your workout. maybe you've got a lot of brain fog and you just feel more heavy and dense and sluggish. There's a lot of different ways that fascia could be impacting both your mental and your physical state.
That's so important that we talk about that too, because it isn't just the physical, it is the emotional, mental as well. And I've found a lot of relief just in the work that I do, especially with the havening technique and even with hypnotherapy, that using these beautiful tools, these neuroscience-based tools, it has helped me even on my own journey, but even with my clients who might be dealing with upsets in their body, what you would normally help folks with, whether it is mobility or performance, and being able to work with multiple practitioners. Like I said, kind of building your tribe, your entourage can be very helpful, because getting to the root isn't just one thing, right? It's almost like when you're planting a garden, you don't just worry about the soil. You worry about the sunlight. You worry about the watering. You worry about a number of different aspects of it. And all of those are like the tools, right? The little brain candy that you're putting in there. So it's really important, everyone, to really understand where you are feeling this, and is it emotional? Is it physical? Because it all comes back to that gut brain response, right? It's affecting you in every area of your body, and it's just finding the right people to serve and help you, So I want to stop real quick, Julia, just to mention to folks that Julia has graciously offered to share her free foam rolling video. It's called Unlock Your Hips. I love that, by the way. That's really great. And I'm going to share that in the podcast notes so that you can download it. You have Julia right by your side. Of course, we'll share more information about Julia so that you can reach out to her if you want to tap into this even further and learn more about what she does. And let's kind of get into things a little deeper, though, too, because you have this program called I'm going to say fascia. I want to say it so badly. It sounds so aristocratic when I say it that way.
Fascia does sound fancier. I'll definitely.
It does. I feel like maybe that's a New York thing. I don't know. So I want to take a poll with folks real quick. Would you say fascia or would you say fascia, or do you say something else? Let me know. Share it in a comment to me. Let's find out what you say. I'm curious because, different dialects all over the country and even all over the world, you hear everything, but nothing's wrong. When we start wronging ourselves, that's when we really question what we feel about ourselves. So fascia or fascia, let us know. Ooh, it is like really hard to say that. So can you tell us about the remedy that you've created?
Well, the Fascia Remedy is the methodology that I've created after all of the experience I've had running my practice the last decade, and a bunch of different modalities that I've learned. I've taken a lot of the most effective pieces and made my own amalgamation. So I'm now teaching certifications in both foam rolling and the actual bodywork technique that I do in my practice in Denver. So that's more of the educational side of my business. If anyone is interested in learning how to, mostly do it for yourself, but you can also now after that be able to do it for other people as well. I've had a lot of people go through the program simply because they want to be able to work on their partner or their daughter or someone that really needs it. And they're like, this is the only thing that has ever worked. And they get it. They see the results for themselves because it's different. It's different from a lot of things that are out there, mostly through understanding pain patterns and these lines of pull we have in the body. And also by having the active movement component of what I do. So even though, we talked about my free foam rolling video series, it's not your standard rolling, friends. It's not just aimlessly rolling back and forth on the roller. It's very intentional. There's a lot of slow breathing and active movement, and it really makes a big difference when you're looking to make change to something that normally does not want to change easily.
The fact that you mentioned breathing, I want to elaborate on that because breath is so important. And the fact that it's not just about just rolling around on your roller, because I learned that when I actually learned the technique myself, that it's very intentional where you are placing the roller, how long it's sitting there, how you are breathing during the entire process, and really the release you feel in such a short amount of time. Like, I had never experienced anything like it. So I think it's very important for us to elaborate on that it's not just rolling around on a roller, because we see them at the gym, right? A trainer might tell you to get on it for a couple minutes to release some of the tension. I get it, but it's so much more. And the tools, if we have the tools for ourselves, like you say, or your family or somebody that you love, that you could encourage them how to do it correctly, it's going to help everyone in the long run, right?
Yeah, and it really depends on what is your intention when you're using a roller in general, right? So, if you've been rolling around on your roller up until this point, it's certainly not wrong. That's the way I think they originally intended it to be used. However, while it's going to create a little bit of heat through friction and might be a good warm-up tool, it might be able to hydrate some of the more superficial layers. You're not able to affect the deeper layers of fascia, and that's usually what's causing the problem when it comes to pain. So if you're really looking to solve something like pain or a mobility restriction, rolling, unfortunately, is not going to be able to cut it.
Yeah. Is Unlock Your Hips just a video series, or is it all part of a podcast as well? I think that was a little unclear on that.
So it's a free video series that lives on my website, and it's just a way for you to start learning how to foam roll in the way that I typically recommend. So, and I know we were going to talk about breathing. Yeah, breathing is definitely
breathing.
So, no change can happen in our body without our nervous system saying that it's okay. And the odds are going to go way up if our nervous system is in a parasympathetic state, which is just the calming side of our nervous system.
Right.
So the easiest way that we can tap into that calming side of the nervous system is through breathing really deeply down to the low abdomen and through the diaphragm. So I will say the type of fascia release and the type of rolling I recommend people do, there can be a lot of intensity to it. Usually the first time someone hops on and starts doing it this specific way, they're like, what? This hurts a lot. And so I'm like, okay, we need to figure out where is a place that we can be at maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10 on their subjective scale with the intensity at a max. So does that mean that we need to wrap the roller in a yoga mat to add padding? Does it mean we need to stop and breathe really deeply a few times before we start the actual movement? Either way, that's a really important part of this, just so that your body can integrate this change more effectively. So you get no gold stars for a scrunched face, holding your breath, gritting your teeth as you really quickly move through this movement. It's not going to do the same thing. So I absolutely would say it's a huge part of what I do, is being able to or just change your relationship with sensation. Like, can we actually train your body to feel safe while you're feeling a lot of sensation? Because most of the time when you feel something that intense, it's a bad thing, right? So if you can train yourself to be calm through this range of motion, and while you're doing this release, it can also really change your relationship with stress in general. So I've seen it have some very interesting effects on people's stress management overall.
Oh, I love that you're hitting on that, because I say that all the time, especially with the havening work, because havening is a transitive verb for the word haven, which means safe place. And you need to have that safe place. If you are in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you certainly are not going to be feeling calm and connected to what you're doing. So even with this kind of work, it's knowing that this is a tool that's going to help you and serve you. And it's a safe place to be. So hitting on that is so important. And obviously, anytime we can be in parasympathetic, high five to that, right?
Yeah.
Great.
It's certainly a process. It's certainly a process. It took me maybe even a couple of months when I first was doing this on my own, of being like, man, I really have to take my time. I have to move slower. Maybe I am unable to do the full range of motion that I wanted to the first couple of times. But it does get better quickly. I would say most people that I work with, even after just 2 weeks, they're like, oh my gosh, this is way less intense than it used to be, because you're able to integrate those changes much more quickly through this style.
And you're able to properly restore it. You're able to see it change. I mean, how fast would you say? I know every person's different. It's bio-individuality, but over the time that you've been working with folks in this area, how fast do you see them finding that relief?
Yeah, well, you're right. It certainly depends on the individual.
Yeah.
A good 75% of people feel a difference after one time, that they'll be like, wow, I feel a lot lighter. I feel more blood flow. I feel at least a small decrease in the sensation I was feeling. But even as, I would say, maybe as long as 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks to feel something, but it happens quickly, within the first couple of weeks. Absolutely. People feel a difference.
Is it encouraged that folks do it daily, that they foam roll daily, or even more than just the foam rolling, the breathing, everything that comes along with your remedy?
So if you're experiencing a lot of pain and discomfort, I would say doing it daily would be really helpful, just because we want to interrupt this pattern of the nervous system firing this pain signal. We want to interrupt any poor movement patterns that might be happening in the body. However, we also need to find this place where we're not overdoing it or overworking the tissue. And that absolutely depends on the person. So I actually just had a client come in after, I think we'd had a week and a half apart of him coming in. And he was like, oh my gosh, I did the foam rolling every day, sometimes twice a day. And I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm like really sore. I've been really sore all week. And I'm like, okay, so we actually don't want that. We want you to, less is more sometimes with that. So I've certainly seen that a lot, where someone with back pain, I show them how to release their quads really effectively, and they feel relief. And so they're like, wow, if I felt that much relief from releasing my quads for 5 minutes, what will 30 minutes do? But it's overdoing it. So if there's any kind of soreness, if there's, really spending more than 5 minutes on an area is truly unnecessary, in my opinion, when you're doing the active movement component. So depending on the person, you might want to back it off and do it every other day or a couple times a week and just see how your body feels.
Great. Good tips. Love that. So just a reminder that Julia is giving away a free foam rolling video. It's part of her series called Unlock Your Hips. Again, I love that. We're going to put the link in the podcast notes to Movement by Julia, which is her website. And then also, I want to play a little game with you, Julia. This is something I do with my guests at the latter part of the podcast. I'm going to throw out a word to you, and I want you to come back with the first word that comes to mind.
Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, I know. I love it. I love this reaction. I keep thinking I should do this at the beginning, but then that changes everything. We'll have a little fun here, okay? All right, here we go. Breath.
Deep.
Mobility.
Full.
Body work.
Lovely.
You're good at this. You're fast. Parasympathetic.
Nervous system.
Foam.
Roller.
Remedy.
Fascia.
And then the last word is fascia. I'm going to say it your way. Fascia.
Miracle.
Miracle. Fascia, tomato.
Same.
I love it. This has been a pleasure. I've been really, really happy to have you talk about this. This is, again, like I mentioned earlier, it is a topic I haven't covered. And I feel that this is so important because, again, it's about understanding your body, befriending the parts of your body, and realizing that there are tools out there, my friends, that can help you that you might not have discovered yet. Or if you have, maybe just understanding how to do it better, support your body better. And Julia, you've been a great source for that. and the Fascia Remedy. We're going to share everything about that, the links in the notes. And is there anything you want to share just with listeners as a final thought?
Just that I deeply understand what it feels like to think you're some kind of a medical unicorn and that there's nothing out there that can possibly help because your thing is so specific or it's so severe. But there really can be answers that you just don't know how to get there yet. And I'm certainly happy to help anyone on that path because I know how it feels.
Yeah, I get it. We're here to serve, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Hilary.
If you want to learn more about Julia and the Fascia Remedy, be sure to connect with her on social media. Also, head on over to her website for that free foam rolling video series that she's sharing called Unlock Your Hips. I know I'm going to be downloading it. I hope you do too. Give it a try. All of her info is available to you in the notes of this episode. And if you're interested to see how havening can help you with the emotional side of your journey and be kind to your mind, I want you to do yourself a favor. I have a new challenge out there for you. It's called the 5-Day Hug It Out Challenge. Give it a try. Part of that challenge is a self-havening guided video experience with me to help you change your thoughts, your moods, your behaviors, your habits, and really help you from getting unstuck, okay? And it's a fun way to take control of your health and start being empowered to live your best life. HIListically Speaking is edited by Two Market Media with music by Lipone Redding and supported by you. So thank you again and again for making this conversation and many conversations part of your day. Just by listening to this podcast and supporting HIListically Speaking, you're taking a step in the right direction to be an advocate for your own health. I'm proud of you for that. I love you, I believe in you, and I will see you next week. Be well.
I know that